The Goblin Who Danced with Shadows. In the misty outskirts of the village of Tumblewood, where the trees whispered secrets and the moon was a constant companion, lived a peculiar goblin named Nerval. Nerval was not your ordinary goblin. He had a penchant for the eccentric and a love for peculiar objects. His cave, nestled beneath an ancient oak, was a treasure trove of the bizarre, corkscrews that turned themselves, jars filled with moonlight, and an assortment of mismatched socks that he believed were enchanted. One foggy evening, while rummaging through a particularly dusty corner of his cave, Nerval stumbled upon an ornate mirror, its frame twisted into the shape of a snarling dragon. The glass was cloudy, but as Nerval wiped it with his sleeve, he was shocked to see not his reflection, but a swirling vortex of colors that danced like flames. The mirror was alive. "Greetings, Nerval," the mirror hummed, its voice echoing like wind chimes in a storm. "I am the portal of dreams. What do you seek?" Nerval, never one to miss a chance for adventure, replied, "I wish to dance. To dance like no goblin has danced before." With a flicker, the portal shimmered, and Nerval found himself in a surreal landscape, an endless field under a swirling sky of lavender and emerald. Shadows flickered around him, taking on shapes that ebbed and flowed like the tide. In this realm, he saw creatures of all sorts, fluffy clouds that giggled, luminous insects that recited poetry, and mushrooms that glowed softly, illuminating the ground. As Nerval began to dance, he noticed that the shadows joined him, swirling around his feet, mimicking his every move. At first, he was delighted. "Look at me," he cried, performing a spin that sent glittering dust flying. "I am the king of the dance." But soon, he realized that the shadows were not merely mimicking him. They were developing their own rhythm, growing bolder and more chaotic. Nerval's joy turned to unease as they twirled faster, tugging at him, urging him into their whirlwind. "Hey, wait. This is my dance," he shouted, but the shadows only laughed, their voices deep and echoing, blending into a haunting melody. They spiraled around him, lifting him off the ground. Nerval found himself in the center of a swirling vortex, spinning through colors and shapes he could barely comprehend. With a sudden jolt, Nerval was thrust into a new scene, a stage filled with goblins, all of whom were wearing ridiculous costumes made of leaves, feathers, and shiny trinkets. The goblins cheered and clapped, urging him to join in their revelry. "Welcome, Nerval. We are the Goblin Council of Dance," one goblin shouted, sporting a hat made entirely of acorns. "Show us your moves." Realizing he was in the presence of a goblin dancing elite, Nerval took a deep breath and launched into a wild series of twirls and jumps, hoping to impress the council. He danced like he had never danced before, blending his unique style with theirs, sudden dips, flips, and exaggerated poses that left the audience roaring with laughter. But the shadows were not done with him. They began to intertwine with his movements, adding an eerie grace to his dance. The council gasped, eyes wide with amazement. "The shadows. They are enchanted," one exclaimed, clutching their chest in awe. Nerval, caught between exhilaration and anxiety, felt the shadows wrapping around him tighter. They were no longer just companions, they were partners in this strange dance, leading him into a choreography he had never learned. The goblins cheered louder, urging him on, and Nerval couldn't help but give in to the rhythm. Suddenly, the scene shifted again, and he found himself atop a grand hill under a brilliant moon. The shadows spread out like an inky ocean, revealing myriad forms, gigantic spiders, luminous owls, and even a line of grinning jack-o'-lanterns that bobbed along to the music only Nerval could hear. At the height of his performance, Nerval felt a tugging sensation, his heart raced, and the shadows spun him high into the air. This is it, he thought, feeling a blend of fear and thrill. I am the goblin of the shadows. But just as he reached the pinnacle of his leap, he realized he was losing control. The shadows, once playful, now seemed desperate to absorb him. No, he shouted, summoning every ounce of goblin stubbornness. This is my dance. I won't be a puppet to you. In a burst of defiance, Nerval landed firmly on the ground, and commanded the shadows to stop. To his surprise, they obeyed, halting midway. Nerval took a deep breath and began a new dance, slow and deliberate, each movement infused with the strength of his resolve. The shadows hesitated, then began to mimic him again, but this time with respect. They swirled around him, creating a breathtaking display of light and dark, and Nerval felt a newfound connection with them. Instead of a battle, it became a collaboration. As the night wore on, Nerval and the shadows danced together, their movements weaving a story of joy and unity. The Goblin Council watched in amazement, realizing that Nerval had not only tamed the shadows, but had transformed them into partners in this magical dance. With the dawn approaching, Nerval felt the portal tugging at him, reminding him it was time to return home. He bowed deeply to the Goblin Council and the shadows, whispering, "Thank you for the dance of a lifetime." The shadows twinkled in response, a sign of their approval. As he stepped through the portal, Nerval found himself back in his cave, the mirror gleaming softly. He chuckled, glancing at the array of bizarre objects around him. The moonlight seemed brighter now, almost like it was dancing too. From that day on, Nerval became known as the Goblin of the Shadows, the one who danced not just for himself but for all creatures who wished to find their rhythm. And on nights when the moon was full, he would hear whispers from the shadows, calling him to join in another dance, a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected partnerships lead to the most extraordinary adventures.